The story of the prophet who prayed and fire fell from heaven is about Elijah, one of the most powerful and bold prophets in the Old Testament. This event is found in 1 Kings chapter 18 and takes place during a dramatic confrontation on Mount Carmel between Elijah and the prophets of the false god Baal. Here's a detailed account of this significant Bible story. Background: a time of spiritual drought. Israel, under the reign of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel, had fallen into deep idolatry. They abandoned the worship of the one true God, Yahweh, and turned to the worship of Baal, a pagan fertility god, believed to control rain and agricultural productivity. Jezebel, a zealous follower of Baal, influenced Ahab to promote Baal worship across Israel. In response to the people's spiritual unfaithfulness, God sent a severe drought that lasted for 3.5 years. During this time, Elijah, the prophet of God, had been living in hiding because Jezebel was killing the prophets of Yahweh. The confrontation on Mount Carmel. After years of drought, God instructed Elijah to go to King Ahab and confront the people. Elijah called for a showdown to demonstrate who the true God was, Yahweh or Baal. Elijah gathered the people of Israel, along with 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah, at Mount Carmel. He issued a challenge. And quote, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." End quote. 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 21. The challenge: the God who answers by fire. Elijah proposed a contest to reveal the true God. 2 bulls would be sacrificed, one for Baal's prophets and one for Elijah. Each side would place their sacrifice on an altar but without setting fire to it. They would call on their respective gods, and the God who answered by sending fire from heaven to consume the sacrifice would be acknowledged as the true God. The people agreed to this challenge. Baal's prophets call in vain. The prophets of Baal went first. They prepared their bull, placed it on the altar, and began calling on Baal from morning until noon. They shouted, and quote, "Baal, answer us." And quote. But there was no response. They danced around the altar and even cut themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, in a desperate attempt to get Baal's attention. By noon, Elijah began to mock them, saying, and quote, "Shout louder. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened." End quote. 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 27. Despite their increasingly frantic efforts, there was no voice, no answer, and no fire. Elijah's turn. Calling on Yahweh. When it was Elijah's turn, he first repaired the altar of the Lord that had been broken down. He took 12 stones, representing the 12 tribes of Israel, and rebuilt the altar. He then dug a trench around the altar, arranged the wood, and placed the bull on top. To make it even more dramatic, Elijah had the people pour water over the sacrifice, wood, and altar 3 times, until the water filled the trench around the altar. This made it humanly impossible for the wood to catch fire. At the time of the evening sacrifice, Elijah prayed, and quote, "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." Unquote. 1 Kings 18:36-37. The miracle. Fire from heaven. Immediately after Elijah's prayer, fire fell from heaven. With tremendous force. It consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, the soil, and even the water in the trench. The fire left no doubt as to who the true God was. The people fell prostrate and cried out, and quote, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." Unquote. 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 39. The aftermath. Victory over Baal's prophets. After this dramatic demonstration, Elijah commanded the people to seize the false prophets of Baal. He took them down to the Kishon Valley and had them executed, as they had led Israel into idolatry. Following this victory, Elijah went up to the top of Mount Carmel, knelt down, and prayed for rain. Soon, a small cloud appeared, and eventually, a mighty rainstorm ended the long drought, signifying God's mercy and the restoration of Israel. Significance of the story. God's power. This story vividly demonstrates God's unmatched power over false gods and nature itself. Elijah's faith. Elijah's boldness in confronting an entire nation, standing alone against hundreds of false prophets, and trusting God to send fire, shows deep faith. Israel's restoration. God's display of power was aimed at turning the hearts of the people back to Him, ending their wavering between Baal and Yahweh. Judgment on idolatry. The defeat and destruction of Baal's prophets is a reminder of God's judgment on idolatry. This event marks one of the most dramatic and memorable moments in the Bible, highlighting the faithfulness of God and His prophet Elijah.